Hello and welcome again to Give and Take. Jeff Zweerink here, and I'm joined by two of my colleagues, Hugh Ross and Ken Samples. Today, we're going to address the question, was the Big Bang just invented to give scientists a way to avoid God? Ken, Hugh, good to have you here in the studio again today.
Hello, Jeff.
So, just to kind of give a little bit of context, when you look at Big Bang models, seems to have there are four fundamental attributes. That there's an idea of the laws of physics are constant. There is an idea of pervasive decay in the universe, the idea that the universe is expanding, and the universe has a beginning. So what I'd kind of like to do is just kind of look through each of those four things, look at them from what does the science have to say, what does the Bible have to say. So Hugh, let's throw it your way. Let's look at the constant laws of physics. What does physics have to say about that?
Well, it does say that they're constant to about 16 places of decimal as far back as 12 billion light years, which is the past 12 billion years.
That seems pretty constant. So if somebody were to look and say, what evidence do we have? I mean, what's kind of the big ideas out there of how that would be illustrated in our physics?
Well, we look at the spectra of distant stars and galaxies, and that tells us what the laws of physics were when the light left those objects.
So we can measure things like the speed of light,
right.
The fine structure, what holds atoms
constant,
together, those
right,
sorts of
right.
things. So, it seems to me that general relativity plays into there too. Where does that play?
Well, general relativity is what predicted that we live in an expanding universe, that the universe has a beginning. And so that was the first clue scientists had that the Bible got it right when it talked about a beginning and when it talked about the universe expanding from a beginning.
All right, so we'll come to that in a second. That's good. Ken, is the idea of what does the Bible have to say about the laws of physics, or does it have anything to say?
Well, I think it puts it in terms of God has created the world. It flows from His logic and His laws. Therefore, the universe is a place that is livable and viable because God's character has built in a place that people can enjoy. And so I think clearly the Bible assumes that the laws of nature are trustworthy and reliable and come from the Lord.
So is this like passages like Jeremiah 33:25 where if in essence God's saying through Jeremiah, look out at the way the heavens behave and it's reliable so you can trust me. It's both of those are kind of rooted in God's character then, if you will.
Yeah, and I think often looking at nature leads us to have greater confidence in the Lord, put our trust in the Lord because of His power and His care for us.
So Hugh, you alluded to this idea that general relativity says that the universe ought to be expanding. I think it's actually that, initially relativity said that the universe is either expanding or contracting.
Right.
What evidence do we have that the universe is expanding?
Well, all we need to do is look at Hubble Space Telescope images of distant galaxies. The farther away those images are, the closer together the galaxies are. We can actually see the galaxies spreading apart as we go from the distant universe up to the present time.
So is that historically how we've known about the expansion of the universe?
No, I mean, that's just a nice visual way for lay people to see it. There are much stronger evidences that we possess that we live in an expanding universe, based, for example, on the redshift and the fact that we've got accurate distances that can calibrate the redshift that tells us that the universe indeed has been continuously expanding from the cosmic creation event.
So I'm going to dig into that for just a second because I think that's important. What is it about the redshift and the distance? What is the signature there that we're in an expanding universe?
Well, what you notice is that the farther away you look at galaxies, the redder the spectral.
And redder means what?
Redder means that these galaxies it's called the Doppler shift.
Right.
And so, for example, when a train goes by, you can hear it being a high pitch as it comes towards you, a low pitch as it runs away. Light behaves the same way, and we actually see that in the galaxies.
So I guess my question is, what does redder mean? What does that tell you about what the galaxy is doing?
When galaxies are moving away from us, we notice that the wavelengths are stretched out. If they were moving towards us, they'd be compressed. The stretching out is the reddening, and that's what we observe. The farther the galaxy is, the more towards the red end of the spectrum that we see the shift.
So the further away a galaxy is, the faster it's moving away.
The faster it's moving away, which tells us we live in a continuously expanding universe.
So Ken, biblically speaking, what does the Bible have to say about the dynamics of the universe, if you will?
Well, what's interesting, and I think it's really kind of a fascinating point, that the Bible uses the word stretching out of the heavens. Now, of course, there are Hebrew scholars who think, well, that's kind of metaphorical language there. It is intended to be kind of a scientific reference. On the other hand, there are Hebrew scholars who say, no, that really is a reference to the way the universe is being stretched out by God. Whatever position you hold, that's a point that's going to make you think.
You know, like God alone stretches out the heavens, Job 9:8. And there's 11 passages, not just one or two.
Right.
So we've got a universe governed by constant laws, a universe that's expanding. This idea of a decaying universe, or in science it'd be the entropy. Kind of give us a brief description of this decay that's going on in the universe.
Well, everywhere we look, we see decay. Hey, just look at one another, guys. Everything's decaying. Stars, the galaxies, everywhere we look, we see not only decay, but a very high rate of decay. As it says in Romans 8, the entire universe is subject to this pervasive law of decay.
So, Ken, do you have anything to add to the biblical sense on that?
I think clearly the Bible talks about death. The Bible talks about decay. Scripture seems to follow well along the lines that, the universe is breaking down. And so not all holy books would necessarily agree with that, but Scripture seems to be clearly communicating that point.
So we're kind of 3 for 3 here. Let's go to the fourth there, the beginning. What scientific evidence is there that the universe began to exist?
Well, we got the theoretical evidence from general relativity. We also have the observational evidence.
Hold on, before you move on there, what's the theoretical evidence from general relativity?
Well, something called the space-time theorems.
Okay.
That if you assume that the universe contains mass, and I think we're all evidence for that, right, guys? That the equations of general relativity reliably describe the movements of bodies in the universe.
That we're pretty confident of.
We're very confident, 15 places of the decimal confident, that if those two assumptions are true, then there really is a beginning to space and time. Space and time are created. And our observations seem to sustain that because, again, the farther away we look, we see that the universe seems to be emerging from an infinitesimal volume. We see it in the temperature. We can measure the past temperatures of the universe, and we see that it's cooling is exactly what we'd expect from a cosmic creation event.
So there's observational and theoretical support for this idea of a beginning. Ken, biblically, where does that play out?
I think it's a critical scriptural teaching, both Jewish and Christian. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Most biblical scholars would say heavens and the earth is a reference to the totality of all things. There are other worldviews and religions that don't believe in a beginning. In Buddhism, the universe neither began nor will it end. So the idea of a universe that comes into existence, has what we might call a singular beginning, is uniquely a biblical idea.
So if I'm tracking here, the Bible describes a universe with a beginning, decaying, expanding, constant laws of physics. That matches the scientific record. So have scientists just embraced Christianity?
Well, Jeff, I wasn't raised in a Christian home. It was seeing Big Bang cosmology in the Bible that was my first clue. This book actually could be the inspired inerrant word from the one that actually created everything. And when I was growing up, Big Bang cosmology was very much in doubt by astronomers. But eventually the observational evidence became so compelling that they had to accept it in spite of its theological implications, and it's sustaining what the Bible has preached for thousands of years.
That to me was a fascinating point. I actually remember looking into that in depth when I heard you speak almost 30 years ago now, that this idea that Big Bang cosmology aligns with what the Bible has to say. And as I investigated, I realized just how much scientists almost didn't want it to be true.
Right,
We've kind of been kicking and screaming almost, dragged to that conclusion. And what I find remarkable about that conclusion is that you look at the universe at the start of the 1900s, and it looked very different. Scientists thought it had existed forever, that it was static and unchanging, and even the laws of physics had some dynamic nature to it. And so major discoveries throughout the 20th century have actually shown that we live in a Big Bang universe, and that Big Bang universe matches the biblical description of the universe. And that is a remarkable powerful thing. If you'd like to read more about that, there's an article called The Most Persuasive Scientific Evidence for God on our website. Go check out that blog and use that to confidently go tell others that the creator of the universe revealed himself in the scriptures.